I can handle that. I have my sticky. We've been working with Langdon now for not quite a year, but I would have to say that now I don't go anywhere without extra sticky Post-its. So it's now part of our staple at our office. Let me tell you a little bit first about who Communities in Schools, who we are. I don't know any of you familiar with us at all. Yay, one low hand. Not surprised. So I will tell you a little bit about who we are, sort of what we do, and how we came to innovation. And even though we talk about this as sort of us being new to innovation, I think one of the most important lessons that we've learned through this journey, which has been a short one so far, is that we've always innovated. And I think that that was really important for us in order to get the buy-in that we've heard is so important from leadership, is really to be able to point out to them as well to our network that this isn't new. It's just something that we recognize has some real intentionality behind it, and that it has a real purpose for our future, and we need to pay attention to that. So who are we? So Communities in Schools, we've been around for little over 40 years. I work at our national office. We are somewhat unique in that we're a federated network of over 130 independent local 501c3 nonprofits around the United States. And our mission is we go into schools. We are not district or school employees. We are, our staff are employed by the local nonprofits. We go into schools, and our goal is to work in partnership with schools to identify what are the needs of the whole school, as well as subgroups of students in those schools that are struggling academically. And our role is to maximize resources that exist in the community and make sure that they get brought into the school and that students and families get connected with the types of supports and interventions that they need so that our students can be successful both academically. So our mission is really about keeping kids in school, making sure they're progressing, and ultimately going on to succeed in life. We do this through this model. What you see up here is a model that has taken 40 years to develop, to build a strong evidence base behind, and to really codify. We have spent millions of dollars behind training and technical assistance and an entire accreditation process to bring along a very large network that, frankly, the only connection they have to us in terms of sort of the hammer, if you will, that we have over them is we own the brand. So we own the name, we own the logo, and technically we've defined and own the representation of the model. But we've spent a lot of time to get everybody in line doing the same thing. And I just want you to think about that for a minute, because when we start talking about innovation, in some ways, that's very disruptive to something that we've spent 40 years to try to build and get everyone on the same page around. But this is our model. We are in, I'll show you a map shortly, but we work in K-12 schools. We're in about 2,400 of those schools across the country. And probably not surprising given the kind of work that we do, we go into the lowest performing schools in many of our highest need communities. One of the things that is somewhat unique about us, though, is that we are not just concentrated in urban communities, but we also work, about a third of our network is rural. Which, as you can imagine, has a different set of challenges compared to our urban communities. And so what we really concentrate through those supports that we deliver is what you see up here. This is where we focus. These are the outcomes that we're trying to achieve for our schools and for our students. It all centers around relationships, and a real focus on building social and emotional competencies and skills for our students so that they actually can receive the instruction from qualified teachers. So we help create conditions, if you will, for learning to be able to happen. Our work is very much concentrated on people, processes, and programs. And that's important as we try to think about where can we innovate on our work. And where we are, again, we're in 25 states in the District of Columbia. Again, about 132 affiliated organizations. We have what we call, excuse me, 3 licensed organizations. I'll get to that in a minute, because that is actually one of our biggest approaches to innovation. And we serve, again, about 1.5 million students. But what's important to note, if you look at this map, I've been around this organization. I've been at the national office for 8 years. I came on board to build our research department and build our capacity. Started working with the organization as a consultant, research consultant in 1999. This map has not changed much in 20 years. So our ability to grow and expand has been at a very slow pace. And that has become a real imperative for us. And the reason is we know there are more than 14.5 million students in our country that are in need of the types of supports that we provide. We have a model that has evidence to show that it works. We have a history that shows it's, in order for us to reach those additional millions of students, it's going to take us about 100 years. I don't plan to be around in 100 years. Our board members are not going to be around in 100 years. And so when we started looking at this, it became very clear that we have, not only have we had to change and shift sort of our North Star and what we want, what our vision is for our students, but we realized we had a real moral imperative to figure out how do we get our solution into more schools and allow us to impact more students. So we went through a strategic planning process 2 years ago. Last year was the first year that we implemented it. And through that, we went through the process that you saw earlier about vision and strategy and strategic objectives. And one of the things that we recognized was that we had 2 things that we really needed to accomplish. One was this imperative that you see up on the screen. It was how do we grow faster, but still with integrity, and how do we reach more students and have greater impact? But the other reality was we're a nonprofit, but it costs money to run a nonprofit. And we needed to find ways to earn revenue, which is a whole new concept for us. So what we did is we looked at how can we first innovate on our business model and on our delivery of our model of what we call integrated student supports. And I mentioned earlier that we have what we call 3 licensed partners within our network. Again, our typical traditional approach has been we go into a community, we stand up a new 501c3, and they establish themselves, they fundraise, and they form partnerships, and we hire and place staff in schools. And again, as I told you, that evolution has taken a lot of time, a lot of resources, and we really aren't growing at a pace that's fast enough to keep up with the need. So a couple years ago, we started getting requests for us to come into more communities, but one of the things that was clear was we don't want another nonprofit. We are inundated with nonprofits. We don't have the resources to sustain nonprofits. Please do not bring another nonprofit to our community. So we tried 2 different things. One was to go in and actually train other nonprofits on how to deliver our model of integrated student supports, and we would license them. They would go through our accreditation, just like our affiliates, but we're not having to stand up a new nonprofit. We can find one that has a similar mission and give them the tools to go in. The second model was we were getting requests from districts who were saying, we want to be able to do this. These are our kids. We want to be able to provide the kind of supports, but we need a sort of a methodology, an evidence-based approach for how to do that. So we started testing out going in and training school districts and their staff on how to deliver the model, again, under this licensure model, so kind of a franchise type model. So that was continuing. The other was we realized one good way to potentially grow is to introduce people to what we're doing, and so we started exploring professional development, external professional development, where you don't have to do the whole model, but we can train you on different components of the model so that you can kind of get a taste, and we can ensure you're doing things the right way. And so that's another foray into trying to grow and expand our reach. But underlying all of this is that we can earn revenue from these individuals. So this was something we'd been doing. When we created our strategic plan, there were specific objectives around each of those. And then we started talking about this concept of innovation and creating an innovation lab so we can create these products that we can then go out and sell and market and make money off of, and they can help us be more efficient and drive greater impact. And what was fascinating, looking at back now, we did not look at these new business models as innovation. They were treated separately over here, and then we were talking about innovation under this nebulous concept of a lab as something else. And I think through this process, which Langdon has helped us understand in a journey we've gone through, we've actually recognized that, again, we were doing some innovative things. We weren't thinking of it that way. And in fact, our business models, we have very much innovated on. And in addition to this earned revenue and reaching more kids, one of the things we realized real quickly, and Mark, you mentioned this in your presentation, was that this concept of integrated student supports is no longer a secret. More and more people know about it, they see the value, they want to get involved. We have education legislation now that calls it out as being not only important, but fundable. And so we realized real quick that other people were going to start trying to reach those 14+ million students if we didn't figure out how to grow faster. So that all helped our board and our leadership get behind this idea of thinking outside the box, thinking differently, and realizing if we don't innovate, we will die. Other people will surpass us, and we may have be known as the founders of the movement, but we will be left behind. So that's really where the business model side of our innovation came from and where it's continued to evolve. My job is leading up our research and evaluation, and there were a couple things we had in the works before we really introduced this concept of the Innovation Lab. So I want to tell you about two products that we began working on and that are in the works, and then I want to talk about one of our more exciting approaches that we're using to surface innovation within our network more broadly and to help us achieve our goals of reaching more kids and earning revenue. But two of those products, so again, as I said before, we're very dependent on people, and one of the greatest commodities is time. And when you're working with students in school, time is something that we don't have a lot of. So maximizing efficiencies, creating more space for our staff to spend interacting with and supporting students is very important. And one of the things that we found was that in order for us to know who to work with, we have to be able to assess their needs. Assessments take time. As I pointed out before, one of the areas we focus on is socio-emotional development. In order to assess those needs, again, it often means you sit down at a computer and fill out a questionnaire. Often our site coordinators have to help our students walk through and understand those questions. Well, for elementary students, it gets even more difficult because of their level of comprehension, and oftentimes you have to depend on observations of others. Well, that was going to be a challenge because teachers, parents, our staff didn't have the time to do individual student observations. So we've engaged in a partnership with the Virginia Serious Game Institute at George Mason University and a startup tech company to transform a paper pencil assessment into a game. So we're using gamification of this assessment as a way to allow elementary students to pretend that they're going into space and they're learning space travel, so they have to go to base camp, and while they're at base camp, they're completing these tasks, they're interacting with people, and of course, on the back end, we're gathering data that is helping us assess how they're doing around things like emotional regulation, task management. We're able to assess things like empathy, how they communicate, decision making. We're capturing all that data on the back end. And so this will become our new tool for how we assess our students. But additionally, it becomes a product that we can actually monetize and sell and help us with our earned revenue. So that's one example. The other one is around using our data. Data for us is essential to our work. It helps us identify who we need to work with. It helps us identify what support students need. More importantly, it helps us determine what's working and what's not working. But again, most of our staff, they're social workers. Data is not why they got into this business. They got into this business to spend time with kids and to work with kids and families and to help them. They did not get into this to sit in front of a computer and enter data or to look at data or try to interpret data. And again, it takes time to do that. So we are exploring and going down the algorithm path and looking into machine learning as a way to create a tool that can really automate much of our processes and help us use our data and our decades of data to better pinpoint and identify not only the students that need our support, but help us identify what supports are most impactful so that we can take some of the guessing game out of that, ensure alignment, and hopefully maximize our impact. So again, another example of how we are looking to sort of utilize our data, innovate, explore the use of technology and how it can help us better reach more kids and have more impact. But again, another tool that potentially we can monetize and sell and generate revenue back to the organization. So that's all fun. Those are all things we were doing before. What we weren't doing, though, as most of us adults tend to do, is we're trying to solve for problems that are facing our children. And we think we have the answers. We don't always have the answers. As a parent of two, I know I don't always have the answers. But we are working with a very large population of students, a very untapped resource, valuable resource. And so this fall, we launched our very first Student Innovation Challenge. It was very exciting. We've learned a lot from it already. First of all, we need to give them more time. But what I want to say about this is that not only is, at the end of the day, not only are we hoping we will get some ideas that we can move forward in the development process and hopefully get some prototypes and maybe some actual products out of, more importantly, I think, is the benefit to the students for being involved in the challenge itself. They are being empowered to come up with solutions to real-world problems that face them every day. And that's not something that often is afforded to young people, but in particular, the young people that we're working with in the communities that they're in, where they're often seen as the problem, rather than they actually have the solution. And many times, the adults are the problem. So we launched the Innovation Challenge, as I said, in the fall. Part of this, it was very much grounded in design thinking. So again, we're teaching them 21st century skills. So this is very important to help them with their college career readiness and help prepare them for life in general, but hopefully life after high school. And they spent most of their time in the Immerse and Invent phases of the design thinking process. And one of the things that we did, this was the first time we were doing it, so we wanted it to be manageable. So we put some parameters around what we wanted them to focus on. So these are the 4 areas that we wanted them to think about. They worked in teams of 4 to 8, and these were high school students, your typical 9th to 12th graders. And they were able to pick one of the 4, some of them mixed, because they came up with a solution that addressed multiple, but focusing on how do we improve behavior, student behavior, how do we get students more engaged, how do we improve attendance, and how do we improve college and career readiness for our students. So these were the 4 that they were able to tackle. Again, I mentioned these before in terms of the benefit for the students themselves, in terms of their skill building, their experience, empowerment, and really just an opportunity to engage with their peers in a way that they normally don't get the opportunity to. So this is just an example of some of the students that participated and some of what came out. Just real quick, I want to give you some highlights of 4 of the ideas that came out. We had about more than a dozen submissions. We had a team, Langdon helped facilitate. We used the risk criteria, the risk and reward criteria to assess them, and came up with 4 winners. Just so you know, the winners are coming to Las Vegas next week. They get to present to a panel that contains, on the panel are 2 venture capitalists, a philanthropist, and one of our former alums. So they'll have a chance to present their ideas, sort of like, we like to say, a friendlier Shark Tank type of experience for them. But just real quick, the ideas. So one was check-in, and this was using technology and an app for students to sort of police each other in making sure that they're coming to school and checking in. And it was a way for them to know where their peers are. They can send them alerts, reminders. But more importantly, the kids also saw the value in this with regard to issues that are going on in our schools around school safety and concerns about things happening in school and not knowing where your friends are or knowing if they're safe. And so this was one of the ideas they came up with. Just another one I will mention, We Are Here. This is another app, and this speaks to the level of trauma that our students are experiencing and the mental health needs that they have. And these students came up with the idea for an app for access to mental health counseling and the ability to connect with peer support groups that are facilitated, obviously, by trained adults. But again, just a couple of examples of some of their solutions. And our next step is really, we think some of these may actually be something we can invest in and take to the next level and bring first and foremost to our network and then beyond our network. But again, this was the first challenge. It was fairly successful. It was a quick turnaround. We're going to do it again in the fall, and we're going to launch another one later in February with our site coordinators, so they too can help us identify real solutions to problems that they're experiencing every day that are making it difficult for them to do their job. And so again, for us, innovation it's not really an option. It's something we have to do if we are going to reach our North Star and reach more kids and reach them in a way that allows us to fulfill our mission of ensuring that they're able to succeed in life. And so for us, again, we were always doing this, but we want to go from good to great. And so I have to leave you with this. We have some Canadians here. You may be on board with me. I'm a huge hockey fan. We're in DC. I'm a huge Cap fan. Go Caps. Let's go for a repeat. But leaving with, of course, the words of the great one. A good hockey player plays where the puck is. A great hockey player plays where the puck is going to be. And that's really what our organization is trying to do, is look ahead and make sure that we are where the puck is going to be so that we don't get left behind. Thank you.